Alright, let's look at question 6. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to note what the altitude is. I'm going to look at one of the legs and its corresponding part of the hypotenuse. And then, and then the other one. So here's this one. Boom. Lastly, our hypotenuse here. Which in this case right now is 4 plus x. And I'm going to see, okay, well, if I look at the purple leg and its adjacent side, which is part of the hypotenuse, so z and x, there's two variables there, and that makes it a little difficult to solve. If we have another leg that actually has a value, then that would be more promising. And if you do look, our green leg, 12, and it's part of the hypotenuse that it's adjacent to, are both values, so we can actually use this, even though you have your variable as part of the entire hypotenuse. So here, the leg squared is equal to, remember the hypotenuse, the whole hypotenuse, which in this case is 4 plus x, times the part of the hypotenuse adjacent to that leg, which in this case is 4. Now we all know 12 squared is 144, and here we have to distribute. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times x is 4x. From here, we can subtract 16 from both sides. So this should be 128 is equal to 4x. And if we divide both sides by 4, 128 divided by 4, I think it's, let's see, 32. We get x equals 32. Cool. So x equals 32. So we can change this x here to 32. And then in that case we know the entire hypotenuse isn't 4 plus x, but rather it's 4 plus 32. So we get 36. Good. Now we can actually solve for y, and we can solve for z. Let's do altitude. Altitude squared. Right, we're referring to this formula here, dealing with the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is h, so altitude squared is equal to the two parts of the hypotenuse multiplied together. So that's 4 times 32. Here we get y squared is equal to 4 times 32, it's 120 plus 8, 128. And so we get y squared, y is equal to the square root of 128. And this can be reduced, but again, I want you guys just to get here for all of your variables. You can reduce them later. Alright, now let's look at z. Z is one of the legs, so we're going to square it, and we know it's equal to the entire hypotenuse times that part of the hypotenuse that is adjacent to Z. See, 32 times 36. $11.52. I can use that, or I can just take the square root of both sides. And you'll see this is actually easier to reduce because you already have a square in there. Notice 36 is a square. So Z is equal to square root of 36 times 32. We know the square root of 36 is 6. So here's our 6. And then we'll just leave the square root 32 under there. This can be reduced further, but once again, I want you to take the easiest route to get to the right answer. So that's what we're doing there. Let's do number 5. Notice our legs now are right here. There's part of the hypotenuse. Here's our other leg. Let's actually stay consistent with these colors. So I think it was like this. Z is a leg. X is a part of the hypotenuse. Y is a leg. 20 is a part of the hypotenuse. 10 is our altitude. And then we know that x plus 20 is our hypotenuse. So it looks like the leg Y is going to be the easiest one to start with. At least we only have one variable. Oh, you know what? What's the length of the hypotenuse? 20 plus x. So instead of looking at our leg Y, let's look at our altitude. Because we do have our altitude. It's 10. 10 squared is equal to 20x. 20 times x. So just to keep it color coordinated, this is 20 times x. And you guys can solve this. 10 squared, 10 times 10 is 100, and 20 times x is 20x. You divide both sides by 20, you find out that x equals 5. Cool, so x equals 5. It's a nice number. I'm just going to erase this and put 5 here. I'm going to erase this and know that 20 plus 5 is just 25. So our whole hypotenuse is 25. This actually makes it much easier. So now we can get our legs. Z squared, our leg squared, is equal to the whole hypotenuse times that part of the hypotenuse that is adjacent to the leg Z. So Z squared, let's see, oh, this isn't 4, this is 5. Right, that's actually 5. Okay, so Z squared is equal to 125. But we can do this, we can say Z is equal to the square root of 125. But it might be easier just to leave it as the square root of 25 times 5 because 25 is a square. If you had gone straight to here, multiplying them, then you'd have to figure out what is a square that would divide that number. Here we can just say Z is equal to 5 square root 5. And once again, I'm just going to make clear these are the same numbers. These are all the same numbers. Okay, so if you write any of those, you will technically get the answer right. In this case, I'm just going to write 5 square root 5. This is fully reduced. Okay, so let's get rid of this. So you can write this or you can write that. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day. You just need to be able to get the right answer, and both of those are technically the right answer. Now let's look at our other leg. Our other leg is y, so y squared is equal to the whole hypotenuse times that part of the hypotenuse that is adjacent or next to that leg, y. So we have z squared is equal to, y squared is equal to the square root of 25 times 20. And if you did it this way without multiplying those, then you would be pulling out the 5 from 25, because the square root of 25 is 5. But let's see what happens if I actually multiply these. Okay, so there's actually a really nice square that we can divide 500 by. Do you know which square it is? If we divided 500 by 5, if I divided 500 by 5, I would get 100. And 100 is a nice square. So, again, this is technically your answer, but we can reduce it to make it look like this. If we take out the square of 100, or the square root of 100, which is 10. So whether you write this one here or this one here, you're still getting the right answer. Okay, let's look at one of these questions on the next page. I think these get a little bit tougher. Let's see. I see my altitude, and I actually have both parts of the hypotenuse. So we can find y pretty easily. The altitude squared is equal to one part of the hypotenuse times the other part of the hypotenuse. So y squared equals, is this 45? So y is equal to the square root of 45. And I'm not even going to reduce that for now. I know I can divide it by 9 and then take the square root of 9, but I just want us to get this first. Square root of 45. Okay, so we have our y value. Now let's go with our z. So z squared is equal to, what's our entire hypotenuse? 18 times, and you'll see that 15 is that part of the hypotenuse that is adjacent to the leg 15. You can solve from here. Let me get my last one in. X squared, that's one of the legs, is equal to the whole hypotenuse, 18, times the part of the hypotenuse that is adjacent to that leg. And I'm out of time.